2 weeks before the wedding, I found out that my fiancée was cheating on me with my friend. I didn't say anything, but during the toast at the wedding itself, I turned on the video with the evidence on the projector. The hall froze. She ran away, he disappeared, and all my friends supported me. It was painful, but so sweet at the time. My fiancé was cheating on me with my best friend. And I didn't say a word until the wedding. 2 weeks before what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, I discovered the truth. I found messages, videos, little fragments of their secret world that they thought I would never see. My heart sank as if it had been ripped from my chest, leaving a hollow emptiness filled with disbelief, anger, and a strange, simmering curiosity. She, the woman I trusted with my entire future, was laughing behind my back with the person I considered my brother, my closest friend. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined, but instead of screaming, confronting, or running away, I made a decision. I would let the wedding happen, and I would write the ending myself. Every day leading up to the ceremony, I watched them pretend, smiling and laughing as if nothing had happened. I planned meticulously, gathering every piece of proof I could find, from texts to videos, each one a damning testament to their betrayal. I rehearsed the moment in my mind, imagining the silence, the shock, the faces frozen in disbelief. On the day of the wedding, as everyone toasted to love and happiness, I carried a USB drive in my pocket like a hidden weapon. When the right moment came, during my own toast, I projected the videos onto the big screen. The room froze. Gasps echoed through the hall. Her eyes went wide, his face drained of color, and my so-called friends shifted awkwardly in their seats. She ran. He disappeared. And for the first time in weeks, I felt a twisted, electrifying satisfaction as the room, once filled with joy, held its collective breath at my silent revenge. Pain lingered, of course, because betrayal leaves marks, but in that moment, the sweetness of justice was intoxicating. All the rehearsed lines, the careful planning, every secret I had kept burned bright with clarity. And as the chaos unfolded, I realized something important. Revenge isn't just about punishment. It's about reclaiming your story, your power, and your dignity. So, what would you have done in my place? Would you have stayed silent and let the moment of truth explode, or confronted them earlier? And was it truly justice, or just sweet, dramatic relief? After the wedding disaster, the days that followed were a strange mixture of liberation and emptiness. I woke up the next morning to messages from friends who I hadn't spoken to in years, messages filled with support and disbelief. Some even confessing that they had suspected something all along but didn't know how to tell me. I felt like I had stepped out of a nightmare and into a strange reality where the air was lighter, yet the echo of betrayal still reverberated in my mind. I spent hours alone, replaying the scene over and over, watching their expressions, the way their eyes widened, the subtle tremor in their hands as they realized everything had been exposed. My fiancée, the woman I thought I knew completely, had become a stranger in a single, shocking instant. And my so-called best friend, the person I had trusted unconditionally, revealed himself as nothing more than a deceitful shadow in my life. But amidst the chaos, I realized that the story wasn't just about them anymore. It was about me, about reclaiming control over my own narrative. I started thinking about the ripple effects of my actions. How would their families react? Their co-workers? The mutual friends we had who were blind to the betrayal? I felt a surge of power and responsibility, knowing that the revelation of truth could change lives. But I didn't feel guilty. Guilt would have been a betrayal to myself, a denial of the injustice that had been done to me. Instead, I began to catalog every detail I could remember, every smile, every lie, every subtle signal I had ignored. Each memory became a piece of armor, a shield against future pain. I wrote in my journal obsessively, documenting my emotions, analyzing every moment, making sure that I understood the depths of their deception. It wasn't just revenge. It was education. I learned the art of patience, the patience required to plan something monumental without revealing your hand. I learned restraint, the ability to endure the anticipation and simmering anger, transforming it into a precise and deliberate action. And I realized that there was something almost poetic in waiting, in letting their own arrogance and assumption of secrecy lead them to their downfall. Over the next few days, I had a strange sense of clarity. I felt a freedom I hadn't known in years, a liberation from trust misplaced and illusions held too tightly. I began imagining my life without them, visualizing the space they would no longer occupy, the mental weight lifted from my shoulders. The truth had been revealed in a single explosive moment, yet its aftershocks continued to teach me lessons about power, patience, and self-respect. I also reflected on my own weaknesses, how I had allowed blind trust to cloud my judgment, how I had ignored subtle signs that something was wrong. I vowed to myself that this would never happen again, that I would carry the lesson like a badge of honor rather than a scar of humiliation. As I walked through the city streets, observing couples, families, and friends, I saw the layers of deception and trust in every interaction. I realized that life is rarely straightforward, that betrayal is not an anomaly but a test of character, resilience, and foresight. I remembered the feeling of adrenaline, the thrill of executing a plan perfectly, the satisfaction of watching truth reveal itself without intervention. It was intoxicating, a potent mix of pain and pleasure that left me alert, aware, and alive in a way I hadn't felt for years. And even as life returned to a semblance of normality, I remained vigilant. I knew the memory of their betrayal would linger, but I also knew that I had turned it into a source of strength, a reminder that justice, when delivered with precision, can be both beautiful and devastating. I started meeting people again, cautiously but with a renewed sense of self-respect. I realized that the world was full of potential allies, friends, and opportunities, but also of risks and potential betrayals. This awareness, rather than making me fearful, made me strategic. I planned my social interactions like chess moves, anticipating reactions, considering consequences, and always keeping in mind the lessons I had learned. And somewhere in the midst of this careful reconstruction of my life, I felt something unexpected, a kind of exhilaration, a feeling that comes only from surviving a storm that you thought would break you. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving, sharpening my instincts, my intelligence, and my capacity for understanding human behavior. I realized that revenge had been the catalyst, not the end, that it had opened a door to a deeper understanding of myself and the world around me. And as I reflected on everything that had happened, I knew that the story of betrayal, exposure, and triumph would remain with me forever, not as a scar, but as a testament to resilience, ingenuity, and the profound satisfaction of seeing justice served in the most unexpected, unforgettable way. So now I ask you, if you were in my shoes, with the truth burning in your hands and the power to reveal it at the perfect moment, what would you do? Would you act, wait, or turn away? And would your satisfaction be as sweet as mine, or would the temptation of revenge consume you differently? After the wedding, life seemed to unfold in slow, deliberate steps, each day carrying a new lesson, a new opportunity to reflect on the chaos I had orchestrated. The initial shock had faded, but its echoes lingered, vibrating in the spaces between ordinary routines. Friends reached out, hesitant yet supportive, their curiosity mingling with admiration. I noticed subtle shifts in the behavior of mutual acquaintances, the quiet acknowledgement in their eyes, the way conversations paused slightly when the wedding was mentioned. It was as if my story had rewritten a small corner of the world, and I was walking through it like a ghost of truth, invisible yet undeniably present. I began to plan carefully, not for revenge, but for the life that would follow it. I realized that the satisfaction of exposing betrayal, while intense, was only the beginning of a larger journey. One that demanded strategic thinking, emotional resilience, and a deep understanding of human nature. Every interaction became a lesson. I watched people, observing patterns, anticipating reactions, analyzing motives. The betrayal I had endured had sharpened my perception, making me acutely aware of deception in all its forms. It was a bittersweet awakening, painful because it reminded me of what I had lost, exhilarating because it revealed the strength I had discovered within myself. I started to rebuild my confidence, slowly and methodically. I revisited old hobbies, nurtured neglected friendships, and explored new interests that had always fascinated me but never received my attention. It wasn't a distraction, it was a reclamation of life. Every step I took, every decision I made, was imbued with a sense of purpose that had been absent before. And yet, despite the progress, I couldn't ignore the subtle curiosity that lingered about the two who had betrayed me. How were they coping? Did they even understand the depth of what they had lost? I resisted the urge to check, to spy, to interfere. Patience had become a part of me, a discipline honed during the weeks leading to the wedding. I knew that true power lay not in obsession, but in the quiet knowledge that I had emerged victorious. Then, one evening, a message arrived that disrupted the fragile equilibrium I had built. It was anonymous, short, and cryptic. Some lessons are only beginning. My heart raced. Was it them? Someone else seeking to stir the past? Or a reminder that life, like revenge, is never truly over? I decided to confront it as I had everything else, strategically, deliberately, with a mind sharpened by experience. I spent hours tracing the source, examining every possibility, considering motives, outcomes, and risks. The process was both thrilling and exhausting, a mental chess game that demanded every ounce of attention. And while I searched, I realized something fundamental. The thrill of revenge, the adrenaline of justice, was not in the act itself, but in the anticipation, in the planning, in the awareness that I could control the outcome. The wedding had been a performance, yes, but it had also been an education, a masterclass in human behavior, patience, and strategic thinking. I began to experiment, applying these lessons to other areas of my life. In work, in friendships, in even the smallest social interactions, I tested boundaries, predicted responses, and carefully orchestrated outcomes. Each success reinforced my confidence. Each misstep became a study in human unpredictability. And in the quiet moments, when I reflected on the chaos and the mastery alike, I felt a strange combination of satisfaction and longing. Satisfaction because I had reclaimed my story, but longing because the journey of self-discovery, once ignited, could never truly end. There was always another challenge, another deception to unravel, another opportunity to assert control over the chaos of life. Weeks turned into months, and the memory of the wedding faded from daily conversations, but never from my mind. I found solace in knowing that I had acted with precision, that the truth had been revealed without compromise. My fiancée and my so-called best friend had vanished from my life, leaving behind only the echoes of their betrayal and the undeniable proof of justice served. And yet, the world kept moving, oblivious to the small revolutions I had engineered in its shadow. I learned to navigate it with newfound skill, embracing the unpredictability of life with a mix of caution and daring. I understood, finally, that revenge is not just a single act but a lens through which we can examine our own resilience, intelligence, and morality. It is a mirror, reflecting our deepest instincts, our capacity for patience, and our ability to turn pain into power. As I walked through the familiar streets, noticing the subtle ways people interacted, the hidden intentions behind polite smiles, I felt both exhilaration and serenity. Exhilaration because I knew I could navigate any challenge with calculated precision, serenity because I had emerged from betrayal unbroken, stronger, and more aware than ever. And as the sun set, casting long shadows across the city, I realized that the most profound revenge is not always the one that shocks others. It is the one that transforms you, quietly, decisively, into someone capable of facing the world with clarity, confidence, and an unshakable sense of self. So, if you were in my shoes, would you use betrayal as a stepping stone to power, or would the bitterness consume you? Would you rise above, or be dragged down by the weight of deception? And in the end, is the sweetest revenge the one that everyone sees, or the one that quietly shapes you into something unstoppable? The days had been calm, deceptively so, but I knew that the storm of betrayal had only temporarily settled. The adrenaline, the thrill of orchestrating the wedding revenge, had lingered in me like a latent spark waiting for oxygen. I realized that the culmination of my plan, the moment when justice was undeniable and unforgettable, had to be more than just exposure. It had to be an orchestration that left no doubt in anyone's mind about the consequences of deceit. I began observing them from a distance, discreetly collecting information. My fiancée had moved to a small apartment across town, hiding behind a facade of normalcy, while my former best friend tried to blend into the shadows of mutual social circles, pretending that nothing had happened. But people are creatures of habit, predictable in ways they don't realize, and I had spent months learning the art of reading those habits. I started formulating a plan that was precise, psychological, and devastating in its clarity. It wasn't about public shaming this time. It was about creating a moment of recognition, a shock so complete that they would be forced to confront the consequences of their actions internally, rather than through external judgment. I mapped out every detail, the locations, the timing, the sequence of events. I rehearsed scenarios in my mind over and over, visualizing their reactions, anticipating every lie they might tell themselves to avoid facing the truth. And then the moment arrived. I knew I had to act when they felt secure, when they believed that their deception had been buried and forgotten. It was a late evening, the city quiet and unaware of the drama about to unfold. I contacted a few mutual friends under the guise of a casual gathering, ensuring that everyone involved would witness the moment of revelation without realizing it until it happened. My heart pounded with anticipation, the kind that sharpens senses, focuses thoughts, and turns every step into an instrument of precision. When I arrived at the small apartment where they both were, I had everything ready: recordings, texts, and evidence compiled into a single, undeniable presentation. The lights were dim, shadows dancing across the walls, but the tension in the room was palpable. I greeted them casually, masking every emotion, every shred of anticipation that burned beneath the surface. Conversation began naturally, but I steered it subtly, guiding them into the space where the revelation would be delivered. And then, with a calmness that belied the storm in my chest, I revealed the proof. Not through accusation, not through yelling, but by letting the evidence speak for itself. Videos played, text scrolled across screens, every message, every confession, every betrayal laid bare in a sequence they could not ignore. Their initial reaction was disbelief, eyes wide, mouths open, hands trembling. But as the minutes passed, comprehension dawned, and the weight of reality crashed down. My fiancée's confident mask crumbled first. Tears welled, a shaky breath escaping her lips as she realized that the world she had hidden behind was gone. My former best friend's face turned ashen, the bravado that had once defined him evaporating in the presence of undeniable truth. And I watched, a strange mixture of satisfaction and solemnity washing over me, as the consequences of their actions became inescapably clear. It wasn't about yelling, humiliation, or spectacle. It was about the precision of timing, the inevitability of truth, and the silent power of justice served without compromise. In that moment, I felt the culmination of months of planning, patience, and observation crystallize into a perfect equilibrium of emotional clarity. They could not argue, could not hide, could not escape the impact of the exposure. They had created it themselves through choices, lies, and betrayal. And as the reality of their actions settled in, I realized something profound. Revenge, at its most powerful, is not about cruelty. It is about awareness, control, and the elegance of inevitability. I left the apartment quietly, without a word, leaving them to grapple with the wreckage they had created. The city streets felt different as I walked away, lighter yet sharper, as if I had shed a layer of vulnerability that had weighed me down for years. I felt the intoxicating blend of closure, triumph, and emotional clarity, knowing that I had orchestrated the perfect balance between revelation and justice. And yet, even in the aftermath, a lesson lingered. Power is not measured by anger or force, but by patience, strategy, and the ability to see the world as it truly is. The storm I had unleashed was complete, irreversible, and utterly precise. And as I disappeared into the night, leaving the echoes of betrayal and recognition behind, I felt a quiet exhilaration, a satisfaction that went beyond revenge. It was the affirmation of control, foresight, and the profound knowledge that the world, when navigated with patience and intelligence, bends to those who understand it fully. So I ask you, if you had the chance to orchestrate a moment of undeniable truth, would you act with patience and precision, or would you let raw emotion dictate the outcome? And when the consequences finally hit, would you feel satisfaction, regret, or something even more complex? Like the quiet, unshakable power of knowing you were right all along. The aftermath of that night settled into a strange, surreal calm. The chaos I had orchestrated, the careful construction of exposure and revelation, had left behind a silence that felt heavier than any noise. I walked through the streets alone, feeling the cool evening air against my skin, listening to the distant hum of city life, and marveling at how much power had been contained in a few carefully chosen actions. The wedding, the toast, the projection of undeniable proof, those moments were over, yet their echoes lingered, not only in the minds of those who had betrayed me, but in my own consciousness, shaping how I would navigate life from that point forward. Friends and family reached out, cautiously at first, then with admiration, curiosity, and sometimes incredulity. They wanted to hear the story in every detail, to relive the tension, the shock, The perfect timing that had made the revelation so devastatingly effective. I found myself recounting the tale with a mixture of solemnity and dry humor, watching as eyes widened and jaws dropped at moments I had meticulously timed, the precision of my planning clear even to those who had not been present. And yet, beyond the social ripples, the applause, the whispers, there was a deeper transformation within me. I was no longer the person who had blindly trusted, who had been vulnerable to deceit and betrayal. I had become someone who could navigate the treacherous waters of human behavior, someone who understood that power is as much about patience and observation as it is about action. The lessons of betrayal, revenge, and revelation had crystallized into an enduring awareness, a lens through which I could interpret motives, anticipate actions, and act decisively when necessary. Life, naturally, continued. Work, new social interactions, the mundane routines of daily existence. But nothing felt mundane anymore. Every interaction, every conversation carried weight, nuance, potential consequences. I moved with an awareness that was both exhilarating and exhausting, a constant interplay between vigilance and engagement. Occasionally, I would hear whispers of what had happened, the former best friend avoiding eye contact with mutual acquaintances, my fiancée retreating into isolation, but I did not seek them out. The satisfaction of seeing truth revealed was not in chasing continued drama. It was in the knowledge that justice, once delivered, leaves its own indelible mark. Weeks turned into months, and I began to rebuild the life that betrayal had threatened to dismantle. I pursued old passions, explored new opportunities, and connected with people who valued honesty, integrity, and genuine connection. The scars of deceit remained, yes, but they were not wounds. They were badges of experience, reminders of my capacity to endure, observe, and act with precision. I understood now that revenge is not merely an act. It is a state of mind, a disciplined approach to injustice that requires intelligence, patience, and foresight. And in quiet moments, when the city was still and the world felt suspended, I reflected on the journey, the betrayal, the planning, the ultimate execution of a plan that had been months in the making. The satisfaction I felt was complex. It was not cruelty or malice, but clarity, power, and a profound sense of reclaiming my own narrative. I had turned the pain of betrayal into a tool, shaping it into an instrument of justice that was as elegant as it was devastating. And yet, life is never entirely predictable. New challenges would arise, new betrayals, new tests of patience and strategic thinking. But the foundation had been laid, the lessons internalized, the boundaries of power understood. I moved forward with confidence, awareness, and a subtle, almost imperceptible edge that comes from surviving and thriving through the ultimate test of human trust. I often think back to that wedding day, the silence of the room as the videos played, the expressions frozen in disbelief, and I smile, not with malice, but with the quiet satisfaction of a plan executed flawlessly. It was painful, yes, but in that pain was the sweetest clarity, the intoxicating rush of justice perfectly served. And as I consider the journey, the transformation, the calculated orchestration of events that led to this moment, I am left with a question for anyone who finds themselves in a similar storm of betrayal and deceit. If you had the power, patience, and precision to deliver justice, would you use it? Would you orchestrate a moment so undeniable that it reshapes lives, including your own? And finally, when the dust settles and the echoes fade, would you feel satisfaction, closure, or something even more profound? The quiet, unshakable knowledge that you were the author of your own destiny, the master of a story that betrayal could never rewrite?